This is the plaintiff, Robert Balish. He says he was hired to measure the defendant's septic system because they were making an addition to their house, and now they're stiffing him and refusing payment. He thinks that's a really stinky thing to do, won't stand for it, and is suing them here and now for the $500 he's owed. These are the defendants, Edward and Victoria Correas. Victoria says they were quoted a price of $300, and that's what they paid to this man. He's claiming they now owe him an additional $500 that was never quoted? No way! They're accused of sticking it to Sewage Guy.
All parties, please raise your right hands.
Welcome back to the People's Court. Next case on the docket, the plaintiff says that he replaced the defendant's stinky old septic tank, and guess what? He says he got stiffed. But the defendants say the plaintiff tried to raise the price on them after the job was completed, and they refused to pay him any more money than they've already paid. It's the case of that's some stinky service you got.
Thank you, Douglas.
You're welcome, ma'am.
All right, Mr. Balish, your excavating and trucking company, according to you, was contracted by Mr. and Mrs. Correas to do some work at their home with a camera you have to inspect their septic tank. Mr. and Mrs. Correas, why don't you tell me what it is that you were trying to do that you felt required that? You were trying to do what to your home?
We were in the process of getting a new addition building permit, and Lake County was requesting an assessment of the current septic field.
Okay. So how is it that you find Mr. Balish?
One of my wife's friends, a septic installer, he referred me to Mr. Balish.
Okay. So tell me what happens that morning. Mr. Balish, they contact you. First of all, who do you talk to?
I talked to Ed.
Okay. And what does he tell you?
He said he was putting a room addition on his house to make it a 3-bedroom. And he said the county health department wanted a verification of how big his septic system was.
Okay. So did you talk to him about price?
Yes, I went out there. I talked to them. I says, for me to do it, I have to run a camera with the locating head. That way I can push the camera through there and physically measure the distance of each run.
And it would cost how much?
I told him the camera rental would be $300 for the day, and I charge $50 an hour per guy. I says, figure about 4 hours with 2 guys.
Did you have him sign a contract?
No, we did not. I did everything verbal.
Okay. And then what happens? You schedule a date right there verbally with each other?
Yes. I told him I'd be out there Monday. I showed up out there with my helper. And I talked to Vicky, and she said, Ed canceled. I says, I did not get no notification until I just showed up. I says, what do you want me to do? I already rented a camera. She went and called her husband, and then she came back and says, if I can keep the labor, I assume she meant the labor price to around $300 to go ahead and do it. So I proceeded.
If you could keep the labor price to $300, go and do it. That's what you think she said.
That's what I understood.
And according to you, you had already told the husband that the rental was $300.
The rental of the camera was $300. The labor cost was $50 per hour. It would take 2 guys and figure about 4 hours.
So you had quoted, you figured $700. That's what you quoted.
Correct.
Then according to you, she tells you keep the labor cost down to $300. You think that's what she says. But according to you, Mrs. Correas, what was it that you say you said?
I told him after I talked to my husband that he would approve of the $300, and there was anything mentioned over any $700 or $500, and basically I told him he was canceled, and we had another septic, former one that came out that I believe you have the paperwork for. He already completed an inspection, so why would I need 2 done in the same day?
Okay, well, Mr. Correas, what happened here? Because according to Mr. Balish, you hired him and you never canceled him. So what happened?
He was contacted via phone, and a date was set up. But the question there, I asked him, are you basically licensed in unincorporated Lake County? Which he's not. We cannot use anybody in.
Why didn't you just tell him? Okay, hold on one second. Hold on one second. Back it up. Did you ask that question when you hired him?
Yes, I did. He said he was.
And what did he do? Did he lie? So you're saying he lied?
He lied when we checked the paperwork that I sent you from the county. He's not licensed in unincorporated Lake County.
Okay, are you licensed in unincorporated Lake County?
Yes, I am.
Okay, what did you send me that would indicate that he's not?
I sent you a printout from the county noting he was not in good standing.
He's not even on the list.
He's not even on the list, Your Honor.
I've got it. Do you happen to have your license? How do you get licensed in a particular county?
You give them a certificate of insurance and your county bond and everything, and you have to go under.
It's not like you apply for a special license from that county. You just have to go to the building and zoning department and you have to show them something.
Correct.
But here's my question, okay? You say you canceled him because you found out that he wasn't licensed in your county.
Yes, ma'am.
Then why on God's green acres did you then allow him to photograph your septic tank? Why didn't your wife and you say to him, get lost, you lied to us, you're not licensed here, and we don't want to use you?
Well, I did tell him that I didn't need him, and he insisted. He had his worker get this camera out of his truck, and I said, don't do anything.
Ms. Carius, look at me.
until I talk
If you
to my
think for
husband.
1 second that I think he put a gun to your head so he can rifle around in your septic tank, you are going to be sorely mistaken. I am not going to believe that. What happened instead, and is infinitely more believable, is that he tells you, I've already rented it. I never got a call canceling anything. And you turn around, you call your husband, and your husband gives you the go-ahead to do something. And then there's a miscommunication. Please don't tell me that. How big was a gun that he put to your head so he can rifle around in your septic tank? Come on. You know you had to give him permission to go on your property and go into your septic tank and take all those pictures. That doesn't happen by force.
He wouldn't leave.
Really? Why don't you call the police?
He was asked to leave.
Tell him don't go on my property. You got to go. You can't stay here.
He drove up on my lawn.
Oh,
No,
what else did he do? Did he beat you up?
I don't think so.
No, right. Okay.
I don't think so.
So please, let's be honest, because I virtually insist upon it when people are placed under oath. Please do not tell me that he forced himself into your septic tank. So let's regroup and let's figure out what was said by whom on that morning. He gets there and you tell him, wait, my husband canceled you. According to you, he never canceled him. How did you cancel him, by the way, Mr. Carius? What method did you use to cancel him?
Via my mobile phone.
And did what? Talk to him?
I called him and notified him that he was canceled. He was not licensed and unincorporated Lake.
Oh,
No,
what did he
best
say
I
when
could
you
do-
said all that?
Best I could do was leave a voicemail, ma'am.
Okay, so you leave a voicemail saying you're not licensed, so we don't want to use you. Then he shows up. Maybe he didn't listen to his voice. Did you ever find the voicemail afterwards or no?
No.
Okay, so let's say that's some big miscommunication. You don't listen to your voicemails. It got erased by accident, whatever. Let's assume he placed the call. He then shows up at your place, and you have every ability to turn him away. What you do is you call your husband. What does your husband tell you to do in that phone call?
He told me to basically tell him we don't need him, which is what I did. And he says, well, you're going to need a camera for the county. And I said, it doesn't matter. You're not licensed. And he said, well, I already rented the camera, so I can go ahead and do it. And I said, if you can do it for under this amount, that's fine. So he did get paid. He got sent a check.
Did you receive, according to them, they told you that if you can do it for $300, then you could do it. You used the term when you were testifying, Mr. Balash, that I understood it to mean $300 in labor. You're presenting a bill of $500. So my question to you is, what did it cost you to rent the machine?
$200.80. And you add sales tax to that, it comes to $214.85.
So you end up sending a bill for $500. It would be really good, though, if we had text evidence of who agreed to what, wouldn't it? Or if we had a contract that people fill out, an invoice, here's a work authorization. Those would all be good ideas, right?
Yes, it would be.
According to
my
Ms.
mistake.
Carius, you forced your way into her septic tank. Now she's telling me, well, I told him that if you could keep the bill under $300. What ends up happening is that Mr. and Mrs. Carius send you a check for $300. Did you receive that?
I never received a check from them.
Where
But I
did you send it?
receive-
Go ahead. What did you receive, Mr.
I
Bauer?
received a letter from him right here. You should have
Yeah.
a copy of that. Saying that
I do.
if I agreed to it, he would pay me $300, which I never responded back to him or his lawyer.
Okay. If you sent him a $300 check, did you send it in a separate letter than that one?
No, ma'am.
Did you send it in that letter?
Yes, ma'am.
Has a $300 check been cashed?
No, ma'am.
Oh, okay. All right. So the question then becomes, what was authorized? What did people agree to? And if I cannot find that there was a legitimate agreement, then what is the fair market value of the service? Now, as it turns out, because you wouldn't pay him, he didn't give you the report. So you didn't end up using the pictures. The other guy that you had there that morning, that fellow didn't have the camera, right?
Yes, ma'am.
It wasn't
Okay.
necessary
Now-
for the county.
Well, as it turns out, in the end, you were able to get your permit with the other fellow's report. Hey, septic tank looks good, and no camera work. I know that's what ended up happening. But as you and I both know, your friend who was a professional said, listen, they're going to require the camera work, so you're going to need that, so make sure you rent a camera. Mr. Balash, when you sent the camera down there, what was going to be the final answer on whether or not they could make an addition according to your report?
I told Vicky that according to the county, that is not a big enough septic system for a 3-bedroom house. And she says, well, I'm not going to spend $1,000 a run to enlarge it. I said, but that's up to you. I was just told to come here to verify how big the system was.
Okay. At any point in time, did she ask you to put something different in the report than what you were saying?
Later, the next day, Ed called me up. He says, write your report up, but do not write no measurements down for the system. And I told him I will not lie, falsify a document with my name on it. So I never sent him the report because I never got paid. And you should
Now,
have
I
a
saw
copy of my
some
report.
correspondence back and forth, and I don't know if I saw it in a letter or a text, but where you said, you know, renting the machine is only X. Tell me about that. Who looked into that?
Us, and I don't know do you remember what they told you?
Between 240 and 260.
That would be for the day. And he was not here for 4 hours.
Folks, when there's two parties to a contract and it's a verbal contract and each of them are saying a completely diametrically opposed thing, what you do is you end up putting the judge in the position of having to decide what a fair market value of the service is, you see? So I'm having trouble with a couple of things that you guys say, Mr. and Mrs. Carius. When you say he kind of forces himself onto the septic tank, I don't buy that. And when you say, Mr. Carius, he's worthless to me because he's not licensed in this place, and that's what I told him in the message, I also don't buy that, because then you wouldn't have told him, okay, keep the cost down, but go ahead and do the service. Because if you had canceled him for that reason, you would have told him to get off your property. So I find that there's a little bit of problem with the veracity of your testimony. Now, Mr. Balash, I find that I have a little bit of problem with the way you do business. If you want to get paid X, make sure that there's some clear, understanding between everybody that you should get paid X. It's way better. Now, you've lived a long and mature life, and maybe you've never had to come to court, and this is the first time. This is all I see. But maybe for you, hey, it's a cost of doing business. I do everything word of mouth. Everything works out well in the end, so I don't care, and that's fine. That's your choice. It's your life. So what I have here is him requesting not the $700 that he claims to have quoted you, and not the $300 that you wanted to pay, where he claims he had rented it for $300. According to you, what did you end up renting it for? $210 for those hours? I think that's what you said, Mr. Balash.
$214.85 was what the would have been for 4 hours. That's the least amount of time you can.
Because they don't rent it for 1 hour. They don't rent it for 2 hours. That's the minimum segment. And then the rest of that would have been your labor costs, right? So it would have been $400 in labor. This is not an unreasonable bill. If you don't want to pay that, and you claim he's useless to me because he's not certified, and he came even though I canceled him, and I told him I didn't need him and don't come over here, and then I see in your letters to him, my wife told you what to do, but you didn't do it. You wanted to do whatever you could do to milk us. If all these things are a problem for you, then I got an idea. Get everything in writing yourself so that you know what your costs are going to be. But if there's no, assuming in a case like this where everybody has a different idea of what the costs are going to be, then it's up to me to decide what a reasonable bill is. And $500 is not an unreasonable bill. I'm finding in favor of the plaintiff in this case in the amount of his lawsuit, $500.
So the plaintiff prevails. He will get paid, after all, $500. Mr. and Ms. Carres, what do you think about the judge's decision? She really didn't believe a lot of things you were saying to her, obviously. She had problems with your testimony.
Well, when he came, he drove up my front lawn. I have 2 driveways, which kind of infuriated me. Why would you drive on my lawn, not my driveways?
Really?
The bottom line was he lied to me initially. He lied about saying he was licensed in unincorporated Lake County, which he's not, which we found out after the fact and contacting county. Anything
His
he
report
did.
wouldn't have mattered regardless. They wouldn't have given us the permit without a licensed contractor.
All righty. Well, that's your testimony, that's your story, but unfortunately you still lost. All right, Mr. Balish, let me ask you. You're going to get $500 after all? You feel vindicated?
I feel pretty good.
You think you've learned anything from this whole incident that could make your business better?
Well, a lot of times I do write contracts out, but this was referred to a friend, and I didn't do it, and I thought we had a good understanding on the first meeting. And I am licensed in Lake County, Indiana. You got to go by Robert Balish Trucking and Excavating.
So they're wrong when they say you're not licensed. All right, well, congratulations. Correct. You did win the case after all. Okay. All right, time now for another session of After the Verdict. Let's join the judges.
Every time I call a plumber, I get this impression that they're going to tell me, whatever it is, it's going to cost you $500 if that's what it is, right? And look, it's not cheap, but you know they have the know-how and they'll do the work for you.
For their expertise.
Exactly. And in this case, you were not convinced that Mr. Balish came in and somehow bamboozled the plaintiff, in this case, or the defendant rather in this case. You thought that he just came to do the job that he was asked to do.
It's just, listen, whenever you have a case in front of a judge and you're testifying, your credibility is very, very important. So if a judge catches you pushing the envelope on one thing, it kind of colors all of your testimony. So what do we have here? They had no evidence that he wasn't licensed. None. They just had a list and it didn't have his name on it. But that's not evidence that he's not. Evidence that someone's not licensed is having the county certify that they're not licensed, and it's an official document, and he says he was. But I know, and I hope you know too, I don't know, but there's no way he knew that day or he wouldn't have had him do any work. Right. So when he says, I called him to cancel him because he was lying about a license, I know that's a lie.
Well, they also said he wasn't there that long, but even if he was there for just a couple of hours, that's what?
That's the expertise you pay for.
Yeah, $250 an hour. It reminds me of the old joke about the guy who calls the plumber to come to his house. The plumber goes under the sink and works for a little while, turns around, hands him a bill for $400, and he looks at it, he goes, $400? You were here for less than an hour. I'm a lawyer, and I don't get $400 an hour. And the plumber looks at him and says, hey, when I was a lawyer, I didn't either.
So Gloria wants to know this. She says, hey, Harvey, I have heard that litigants say in the hallway, this ain't the end of it. I'm going to sue you again. Can they legally do that, or are they just blowing off steam? Here's the deal. These litigants sign binding arbitration agreements. So whatever Judge Millian decides is final. It's all she wrote. One bite of the apple, folks. We'll see you next time.